Beneath the endless white of the Arctic and Antarctic, machines the world barely knows have determined who survives and who vanishes. These frozen giants doubled as lifelines, homes and shields for explorers and nations racing against cold, time, and each other. But what secrets did their oversized tires and roaring engines hide? And what risks haunted the crews who called these titans home? The real history of these machines begins where the map and human endurance began to break. Across the endless Siberian tundra, 8-wheeled giants carried life where the cold erased all signs of roads. These Soviet and Russian expedition trucks, built with an 8x8 configuration, moved hundreds of kilometers from the nearest settlement, their tires spreading weight across deep snow and ice. Each axle carried a share of the load, letting the trucks roll where lesser vehicles would sink or freeze in place. Crews could adjust tire pressure from inside the cabin, dropping it low enough to float over powder or inflating for firmer ground, all without stepping into the bitter wind. Inside, the cabins became both shelter and command post. Insulated panels trapped what little warmth the heaters could muster. Condensation gathered on window edges, freezing into delicate patterns with every exhale. Fold-out tables held maps marked with grease pencil, tracking fuel stops and the shifting lines of rivers under snow. Bunks lined the walls, each with a heavy blanket and a pair of boots kept near the stove to stay pliable. Every morning began with a ritual, gloved hands checking tire gauges, listening for the hiss of air, wiping frost from dials, and running engines just long enough to keep oil from turning to wax. In these rolling outposts, survival depended not just on steel and horsepower, but on the quiet discipline of crews who knew that a single mistake, a missed check, or a frozen valve could turn a lifeline into a trap. At the height of the Cold War, the Arctic became a frontier of urgency and invention. American engineers answered the call with the FWD Terra Cruiser, a hauler built to supply the distant early warning line. A chain of radar stations stretched across the top of the world. Its oversized, low-pressure tires rippled across wind-blasted snowfields, carrying radar modules and communication trailers to isolated outposts. Each run meant days in the white, where breakdowns could put lives and national security at risk. Reliability counted for more than raw power. Crews depended on the Terra Cruiser's ability to keep moving, even as temperatures plunged and the nearest help was hundreds of kilometers away. Across the polar divide, Soviet designers took a different approach. The ZIL E-167 prototype rolled out in the early 1960s, bristling with ambition and complexity. 6 massive wheels, each driven for maximum grip, and twin gasoline engines that together produced formidable power. Cold start systems were engineered for Siberian mornings colder than -60, but with each advance came a cost. Fuel consumption soared, nearly double that of simpler trucks, forcing test teams to plan every route around fuel drops and resupply points. In trial runs across deep Siberian snow, the E-167 proved it could muscle through where others stalled, but its thirst and mechanical demands made it a rare sight beyond the proving grounds. For both crews and machines, the daily ritual never changed. Check every gauge. Listen for the engine's song. Trust in the tools, but never in the weather. In this world, survival balanced on the edge between proven reliability and the lure of untested power. April 2013. A Russian-built capsule glides off the Arctic pack ice, floating through slush toward the North Pole. Its rounded hull and sealed windows create a drifting outpost for private explorers, survivors of failed attempts where meltwater claimed lesser machines. This time, variable tire pressure drops to 0.3 bar, letting the capsule skim over snow or ride high above half-frozen channels. Inside, a diesel stove fights the cold, maps and ration packs crowd the shelves, and survival depends on buoyancy as much as wheels. Ingenuity, not brute force, keeps the team moving. Further south, Arctic oilfield tractors face a different trial. Built for relentless service, these articulated giants haul hundreds of tons across plains where temperatures plunge below -50. Mechanics wrap fuel lines with electrical tape, swap in winter lubricants, and work by headlamp. Engines run day and night, exhaust trailing behind as loads creak over the ice. When blizzards hit, crews move in pairs, sharing the ritual of warming boots over idling engines before the next push. On the softest tundra, Raleigh floaters appear. Their balloon tires, sometimes at less than 0.3 bar, barely dent the snow. Oil crews and scientists rely on them to cross permafrost without tearing the land, leaving only faint marks in the moss. Each morning, hands press gauges to frozen valves, engines coaxed to life. In these frontiers, survival is measured in discipline and invention. Tracks changed the game where wheels reached their limits. Soviet engineers turned to articulated transporters, linking truck bodies with a central flex joint that let the machine snake through frozen marshes and tangled drifts. This S-shaped movement was not just for show, it spread the machine's weight wide, keeping it from punching through crust into the slush below. With each turn, the joint flexed, letting the transporter pivot on itself and wend between obstacles that would stop a rigid frame cold. Crew logs from Siberian oil fields and remote airstrips describe these machines as lifelines, ferrying supplies across ground that shifted from rock-hard to swampy within a day. When the surface softened, tracks distributed weight so evenly that the transporter left only shallow scars, even when fully loaded. Kharkovchanka took the principle further, transforming the tracked chassis into a rolling home. Built in Kharkiv and shipped south in 1959, this 9-meter giant carried crews across 5,000 kilometers of polar plateau. Its 1-meter-wide tracks floated over snow that would swallow smaller vehicles whole. Inside, thick insulation held back -50 winds. The cabin became a world of its own. Bunks stacked along the walls, a kitchen with a diesel stove, work tables crowded with journals and spare parts. Each morning began with maintenance, heating tools over the stove, flushing iced hydraulics with hot water, checking track pins for cracks. In the endless night, the hum of the supercharged engine and the warmth from the stove kept morale alive. Card games and shared meals filled the hours, while outside, the wind carved new drifts that the Kharkovchanka would flatten by dawn. The machine's reliability let crews connect 6 Soviet stations, carrying not just fuel and equipment, but the promise of return. Where grand experiments stumbled, tracks and discipline delivered, proving that sometimes the simplest answer, spread the weight, shelter the crew, was the one that conquered the cold. Steel caravans stretched across the Arctic, each segment driven by its own electric heart. The American overland land train, conceived in the late 1950s, brought a new kind of power to the ice. Instead of relying on a single engine, this mechanical caravan used diesel engines to generate electricity, feeding it to dozens of wheel hub motors spread across every axle. With 48 motors working in concert, the land train distributed its weight and grip evenly, hauling hundreds of tons of cargo over frozen rivers and deep drifts. The Inter convoy, sometimes spanning more than 150 feet, snaked through white silence, each wheel adjusting in real time to shifting snow. Army engineers logged performance that outpaced conventional trucks, drawbar pulls exceeding 100,000 pounds, grades climbed at 35%, and weeks of uptime in deep winter. When the snow softened or the wind howled, the land train kept moving, its power spread so widely that no single wheel could bog the mission down. For a moment, it seemed as if the right combination of scale and ingenuity had solved the riddle of polar transport. But ambition sometimes outpaces reality. In 1939, American engineers pinned their hopes on the Antarctic snow cruiser, a 55-foot behemoth with smooth, treadless tires taller than a man. Designed to glide over snow like skis, the cruiser arrived in Antarctica with 2 diesel engines powering 4 massive electric motors. The promise was bold: to cross the continent, bridge crevasses, and carry a laboratory and airplane on its back. On its first attempt, the cruiser's 10-foot tires spun helplessly, cutting deep into soft snow and sinking nearly 3 feet. Crews tried reversing, jacking up the axles, even digging trenches, but progress measured in yards, not miles. After just 3 days, the mission was abandoned. The snow cruiser became a frozen outpost, buried by drifting snow, its bold lines and smooth wheels vanishing beneath the Antarctic surface. For every giant that conquered the ice, another lies silent beneath it, a reminder that in the coldest places, the line between triumph and defeat is measured in traction, weight, and the limits of what machines can endure. As polar regions warm twice as fast as the global average, new frontiers and new risks emerge. The era of extreme machines isn't over, it is evolving. What humanity builds next in these fragile environments will shape not just exploration, but the fate of the ice itself. Thanks for watching.